What if I told you that Helena Blavatsky, the mysterious founder of Theosophy, knew about one of Christianity's most dangerous secrets decades before the world discovered it buried in the Egyptian desert? Picture this. It's 1875, and a Russian woman with piercing eyes sits in her dimly lit study in New York. Around her, ancient manuscripts whisper secrets that would shatter religious foundations. She writes furiously, her pen scratching against paper like a serpent moving through sand. The knowledge she possesses isn't just revolutionary, it's forbidden. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky claimed to have access to hidden wisdom that mainstream religion had buried for centuries. She spoke of ancient texts, lost gospels, and forbidden knowledge that revealed humanity's true origins. But here's what will make your mind reel. In her writings, she referenced concepts that wouldn't be formally discovered until the Nag Hammadi texts were unearthed in Egypt in 1945, 70 years after her death. Among those buried treasures was the Apocalypse of Adam, the forbidden gospel that revealed the true story of humanity's first couple, not as sinners cast from paradise, but as enlightened beings who chose knowledge over ignorance, wisdom over servitude. Blavatsky spoke of the secret doctrine hidden within religious texts, claiming that the biblical story of Adam and Eve was a coded message, a spiritual allegory that concealed humanity's divine origins. She insisted that the serpent wasn't humanity's tempter, but its liberator, the very same interpretation that would later emerge from the Gnostic texts found at Nag Hammadi. How could she have known? How could a 19th century occultist have understood truths that wouldn't be academically validated until decades after her death? The answer lies in a web of secret knowledge, hidden traditions, and mystical experiences that connect her directly to the forbidden wisdom of Adam and Eve. If you're finding this intriguing, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me continue bringing you content like this that reveals the hidden threads of history. The rabbit hole we're about to descend is deeper than you can imagine. Are you ready to discover what Helena Blavatsky really knew about humanity's forbidden origins? Before we dive into the shocking parallels between Blavatsky's teachings and the Nag Hammadi discoveries, we need to understand the landscape of 19th century spirituality. It was an era of great awakening, when traditional religious boundaries were crumbling and seekers were hungry for authentic spiritual truth. Helena Blavatsky emerged from this crucible like a phoenix from flames. Born in 1831 in what is now Ukraine, she claimed to have traveled extensively through Tibet, India, and Egypt, gathering ancient wisdom from secret brotherhoods and hidden masters. Critics called her a fraud, but her profound knowledge of esoteric traditions suggested something far more mysterious. The Theosophical Society, which she co-founded in 1875, wasn't just another spiritual movement. It was a revolutionary attempt to unify the world's wisdom traditions under a single umbrella of truth. Blavatsky claimed that all religions contained fragments of an original universal wisdom that had been deliberately fragmented and hidden by those who sought to control humanity's spiritual development. Her masterwork, The Secret Doctrine, published in 1888, presented a cosmological vision that challenged everything the Western world believed about human origins. She wrote about root races, spiritual evolution, and the cyclic nature of human development. But most significantly, she reinterpreted the biblical creation story in ways that would later be echoed in the Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi. Blavatsky insisted that the Garden of Eden represented humanity's primordial spiritual state, and that the fall was actually humanity's descent into matter, not as punishment, but as a necessary stage of spiritual evolution. The serpent, she claimed, represented divine wisdom, offering humanity the gift of self-consciousness and free will. These weren't just philosophical speculations. Blavatsky claimed direct revelation from what she called the Masters of Wisdom, evolved beings who preserved humanity's original knowledge through millennia of religious persecution and suppression. She described ancient schools of mystery that maintained the true interpretation of spiritual texts, including the real meaning of the Adam and Eve story. What makes this even more remarkable is that Blavatsky wrote about concepts that perfectly align with Gnostic Christianity, a tradition that mainstream scholarship believed had been completely lost until the Nag Hammadi discovery in 1945. From which city in the United States are you watching this? Or from which country in the world is this content reaching you? Leave it in the comments. I really want to know where this message is traveling. The threads connecting Blavatsky to the forbidden gospel are about to become visible. But first we must understand what was truly buried in that Egyptian cave. December 1945. An Egyptian farmer named Muhammad al-Saman is digging for fertilizer near the town of Nag Hammadi when his hoe strikes something hard. What he uncovers will rewrite religious history forever. A sealed jar containing 13 leather-bound codices, ancient books that had been hidden for over 1,500 years. Among these texts lies the Apocalypse of Adam, a first-person narrative where Adam himself reveals the true story of humanity's origins to his son Seth. This isn't the Adam of Sunday school lessons. This is Adam as revolutionary, as keeper of forbidden knowledge, as guardian of humanity's divine birthright. In this forbidden gospel, Adam doesn't speak of sin or shame. Instead, he reveals that he and Eve possessed a knowledge that made them like the gods, a gnosis that connected them directly to the divine source. The serpent wasn't their downfall, it was their awakening. The fruit wasn't cursed, it was enlightenment itself. But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. Adam reveals that this knowledge was deliberately hidden from future generations. The God, who cast them from paradise, wasn't the true divine source, but a false creator, what the Gnostics called the demiurge, who wanted to keep humanity in ignorance and servitude. The Apocalypse of Adam describes how this false god sent flood, fire, and persecution to destroy those who carried the true knowledge. But the illuminated ones always survived, preserving the secret wisdom through hidden schools and mystery traditions that passed the knowledge from master to student across centuries. As scholars began translating these texts in the 1970s, they discovered something extraordinary. The Gnostic worldview presented in the Nag Hammadi library was virtually identical to the theological system that Helena Blavatsky had described in her writings decades earlier. The Gnostics taught that humanity possessed a divine spark trapped in material existence. Blavatsky wrote extensively about the divine monad imprisoned in matter. The Gnostics described the demiurge as a false god who rules over the material world. Blavatsky taught about the Lord of Form, who keeps souls bound to the physical plane. The parallels were so precise that some scholars began to wonder, had Blavatsky somehow accessed actual Gnostic traditions that had survived in secret? Had she been initiated into mystery schools that preserved this knowledge through the centuries? The evidence suggests something even more remarkable, that Blavatsky had not just stumbled upon isolated fragments of ancient wisdom, but had been given access to a complete, living tradition that had never actually died. If this is making sense to you, comment below with your thoughts and share this video with others who need to hear this truth. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. The forbidden gospel of Adam and Eve contained prophecies about humanity's future. Prophecies that Blavatsky seemed to understand with startling clarity. To understand how Blavatsky anticipated the Nag Hammadi revelations, we must examine what both traditions say about the serpent's role in human awakening. This isn't about religious doctrine. This is about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. In traditional Christianity, the serpent represents temptation, evil, and humanity's downfall. But in the Apocalypse of Adam and other Gnostic texts, the serpent is revealed as humanity's liberator, a divine messenger bringing the gift of gnosis, or direct spiritual knowledge. Blavatsky understood this symbolism with remarkable precision. In The Secret Doctrine, she writes that the serpent represents the cycle of necessity that drives spiritual evolution. She explains that what religions call evil is actually the divine principle of wisdom that refuses to let consciousness remain in ignorance. The serpent's gift, the fruit of the tree of knowledge, represents something far more profound than simple disobedience. Both Blavatsky and the Gnostic texts describe it as the awakening of divine self-awareness, the moment when humanity realizes its true nature as spiritual beings temporarily incarnated in physical form. This knowledge comes with a price. Once awakened, humans can no longer live in unconscious bliss. They become responsible for their own spiritual development, no longer dependent on external authority for salvation. This is why the false god of both traditions seeks to prevent human enlightenment. Awakened humans are impossible to control. Blavatsky taught that mystery schools throughout history have preserved this serpent wisdom, passing it down through initiatic traditions that mainstream religion branded as heretical. She claimed that ancient Egypt, Greece, and India all possessed forms of this teaching, and that Christianity itself originally contained this knowledge before it was suppressed by church authorities. The Nag Hammadi texts confirm this historical suppression. They show that early Christianity included diverse schools of thought, many of which taught that salvation came through gnosis, direct spiritual realization, rather than through faith alone or church authority. The forbidden gospel of Adam and Eve reveals that this knowledge was never intended to be lost. Adam tells Seth that the illuminated ones would always find ways to preserve and transmit the wisdom, even through the darkest ages of persecution and suppression. Both traditions teach that we are now approaching a time of great awakening, when the hidden wisdom will be revealed openly and humanity will reclaim its divine heritage. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi library itself can be seen as fulfillment of this prophecy. Here we arrive at the pivotal moment that separates seekers from sleepers, the awakened from the unconscious. Both Helena Blavatsky and the forbidden gospel of Adam and Eve speak of a fundamental choice that every human soul must make. Will you serve the false light of material comfort, or will you embrace the true light of spiritual awakening? In the Apocalypse of Adam, this choice is presented as a cosmic battle between two types of knowledge. There is the knowledge that binds, the rules, dogmas, and beliefs that keep humans obedient and dependent. And there is the knowledge that liberates, the direct realization of divine truth that sets consciousness free from all limitations. Blavatsky described this same division in her writings about the two paths of spiritual development. The left-hand path leads to personal power and material success, but ultimately traps the soul in cycles of karma and reincarnation. The right-hand path requires sacrifice of personal desires, but leads to genuine spiritual liberation and unity with the divine source. The emotional impact of this choice cannot be underestimated. When you truly understand what the serpent offered humanity, you realize that every comfortable lie you've believed about reality must be abandoned. Every authority figure who promised to save you must be recognized as potentially deceiving you. Every institution that claimed to represent divine truth must be questioned and examined. This is why the knowledge has always been hidden. This is why the texts were buried in Egyptian caves and the teachers were persecuted and martyred throughout history. The truth doesn't just challenge religious beliefs, it challenges the entire structure of human civilization as we know it. Both Blavatsky and the Gnostic authors understood that this awakening process is inherently dangerous. Once you bite the apple of forbidden knowledge, there is no going back to innocence. You become responsible for your own spiritual development, your own choices, your own karma. The false god of both traditions, the demiurge, the lord of form, the great deceiver, doesn't want humanity to make this choice. This entity feeds on human ignorance, fear, and spiritual dependence. An awakened humanity threatens its very existence. If this content is opening your mind, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next chapters of this journey into hidden truth. But here's the beautiful paradox that both traditions teach. The very forces that seem to oppose human awakening actually serve it. Every persecution creates martyrs who inspire others to seek truth. Every attempt to hide knowledge creates mystery schools that preserve it more carefully. Every dark age is followed by renaissance and rediscovery. The choice between light and shadow isn't made once. It's made moment by moment, decision by decision throughout our entire existence. And the time for making this choice is now. The most startling parallel between Blavatsky's teachings and the Nag Hammadi discoveries lies in their shared description of hidden masters and secret schools that preserve forbidden knowledge across millennia. This isn't fantasy or wishful thinking. This is the documented reality of how dangerous truths survive persecution and suppression. Blavatsky claimed direct contact with what she called the Great White Brotherhood, evolved beings who had transcended normal human limitations and devoted themselves to guiding humanity's spiritual evolution. These masters, she said, maintained schools in remote locations like Tibet and Egypt, where they trained selected students in the ancient wisdom that mainstream religion had abandoned or corrupted. The Apocalypse of Adam describes exactly such a system. In his revelation to Seth, Adam explains that the divine knowledge will be preserved through generations of the illuminated ones who will pass down the wisdom in secret despite persecution by the false god and his servants. The Gnostic texts found at Nag Hammadi weren't just random spiritual writings. They were the curriculum of these secret schools, carefully copied and preserved by initiate scribes who understood their immense value. The fact that they were buried suggests that their keepers faced imminent persecution and wanted to ensure the knowledge would survive. Modern scholarship has confirmed that such schools actually existed throughout the ancient world. The mysteries of Eleusis, the Egyptian temple schools, the Pythagorean communities, the Essenes, all maintained hidden teachings that paralleled what both Blavatsky and the Gnostic texts describe. But here's what will make your mind reel. Blavatsky provided specific details about these traditions that weren't confirmed by academic research until decades after her death. She described meditation practices, philosophical concepts, and historical connections that scholars only verified after extensive archaeological and textual investigation. The symbols are everywhere once you learn to see them. The serpent wrapped around the staff in medical imagery, the tree of life in Kabbalistic diagrams, the divine androgen in alchemical texts, the phoenix rising from ashes in mystical art. All of these point to the same hidden tradition that Blavatsky claimed to represent. The masters she described weren't supernatural beings, but humans who had completed their spiritual evolution and chosen to remain connected to earthly existence in order to help others achieve the same liberation. They work behind the scenes of history, inspiring discoveries, protecting knowledge, and preparing humanity for the next phase of consciousness evolution. Hit the like button right now. This helps spread this essential message to those who are ready to receive it. The Nag Hammadi discovery itself can be seen as evidence of these masters' ongoing work. The timing wasn't accidental. The texts emerged just as humanity was developing the archaeological and linguistic tools needed to understand them properly. They appeared at the moment when global communication could spread their message worldwide, despite any attempts at suppression. But the most crucial question remains: are these schools still active today? Are the masters still working to guide human awakening? The answer may be closer than you think. Strip away the mystical language and ancient symbols, and you'll find the forbidden knowledge of Adam and Eve operating in plain sight throughout our contemporary world. Blavatsky understood this. She taught that the ancient wisdom wasn't locked in the past, but was continuously being revealed through new forms and expressions adapted to each age. Look around you right now. The internet itself functions like a mystery school, making hidden knowledge available to anyone ready to seek it out. Quantum physics echoes the Gnostic teaching that reality is fundamentally consciousness-based rather than purely material. Psychology has rediscovered what the ancients called the divine spark within human nature. The serpent's gift of knowledge continues to manifest through scientific discoveries that challenge religious orthodoxy. Every breakthrough in neuroscience, genetics, or cosmology forces us to question traditional beliefs about human nature and our place in the universe. Each revelation strips away another layer of the comfortable illusions that keep us spiritually asleep. Blavatsky predicted this acceleration of awakening. She taught that we are entering what she called the Aquarian Age, a time when hidden knowledge would become openly available and humanity would undergo a collective spiritual transformation. The Nag Hammadi discovery was just one sign of this prophesied revelation. The forbidden gospel of Adam and Eve warns that this awakening process would create great turbulence and confusion. As people begin to question everything they've been taught, social and religious institutions would resist and fight back, creating conflict and chaos during the transition period. We're living through that transition now. The old authorities are losing their power to control information and belief. The new consciousness is emerging despite attempts to suppress it through media manipulation, educational indoctrination, and social pressure to conform. But here's the crucial point that both Blavatsky and the Gnostic texts emphasize. This isn't happening to humanity, it's happening through humanity. We aren't passive victims of cosmic forces or enlightened masters. We are the very agents through which the ancient prophecies are being fulfilled. Every person who chooses to seek truth over comfort becomes a modern Adam or Eve, tasting the fruit of forbidden knowledge and awakening to their divine nature. Every individual who refuses to accept easy answers becomes a link in the chain of illuminated ones that extends back through history to the very beginning of human consciousness. The question isn't whether this transformation is happening. It's whether you'll participate consciously or resist until the awakening forces its way through your defenses. Now we arrive at the moment of truth, the point where intellectual understanding must become personal decision. Everything you've just learned places you exactly where Adam and Eve stood in the garden, facing the choice between comfortable ignorance and dangerous wisdom. The apocalypse of Adam makes it clear that this choice cannot be avoided. The knowledge has been revealed to you. You now understand that the traditional religious narrative may be inverted, that what you were taught was evil might actually be divine, that what seemed like wisdom might actually be deception. Blavatsky warned her students that this realization comes with profound responsibility. Once you see through the veil of Maya, the illusion that keeps most humans trapped in material consciousness, you can never again claim innocence. Every choice you make will either serve awakening or perpetuate sleep, both for yourself and for those around you. The false god of both traditions offers the easier path. Keep quiet about what you've learned. Don't rock the boat. Accept the comfortable lies that allow you to fit in with family, friends, and society. Pretend that forbidden knowledge doesn't change everything about how you view reality, but the serpent wisdom calls you towards something infinitely more challenging and rewarding: authentic spiritual transformation. This means questioning everything, testing all beliefs against direct experience, and accepting full responsibility for your own consciousness development. Which path speaks to your deepest truth? Are you content to remain in the paradise of ignorance, following external authorities and accepting their version of reality? Or do you have the courage to bite the apple and discover what lies beyond the boundaries they've set for your understanding? This isn't a one-time choice. It's the central decision that shapes every moment of conscious existence. Every time you encounter new information that challenges your worldview, you face the same fundamental option: expand or contract, grow or stagnate, awaken or sleep. Comment below and share your perspective. I genuinely want to read what you're thinking about this crossroads we all face. The masters that Blavatsky described, the illuminated ones mentioned in the apocalypse of Adam, the secret schools that preserve forbidden knowledge, they all understand that genuine spiritual awakening cannot be forced on anyone. The choice must be made freely, with full awareness of what it entails. What will you choose? Here we reach the ultimate revelation, the final piece of the puzzle that connects Helena Blavatsky's mystical insights to the buried secrets of Nag Hammadi. But this knowledge comes with a warning that both traditions emphasize repeatedly. Some truths are so powerful that they transform everyone who encounters them, whether they're ready for transformation or not. The apocalypse of Adam reveals that the forbidden knowledge isn't just information. It's a living force that reorganizes consciousness at the deepest levels. When Adam bit the fruit, he didn't just learn something new, he became something new. His entire being was rewired to perceive dimensions of reality that had been previously invisible. Blavatsky taught the same principle through her doctrine of spiritual evolution. She insisted that genuine occult knowledge changes the seeker's fundamental nature, activating dormant capacities and creating new responsibilities that can never be abandoned or ignored. This is why both traditions speak of tests and initiations. The knowledge protects itself by ensuring that only those with adequate moral and spiritual development can access its deeper levels without being destroyed by the experience. The test you're facing right now, in this moment, as you process these revelations, is more significant than you might realize. Your response to this forbidden knowledge reveals exactly where you stand on the spectrum of spiritual development. Some readers will dismiss everything as fantasy or delusion, protecting themselves from transformation by refusing to seriously consider the implications. Others will become obsessed with acquiring more hidden knowledge, turning the search for truth into another form of ego gratification. But a few, those whom both traditions describe as ready, will recognize that the real treasure isn't the information itself, but the consciousness shift that comes from taking full responsibility for your own spiritual awakening. The final test isn't about believing or disbelieving what Blavatsky taught or what the Nag Hammadi texts reveal. The test is whether you'll use this knowledge to become a more conscious, compassionate, and genuinely free human being. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's ready for their own encounter with forbidden truth. The masters that Blavatsky described, the illuminated ones that Adam mentioned, they all passed through this same initiation. They faced the choice between personal safety and universal truth, between comfortable conformity and dangerous authenticity. The outcome of your test will determine not just your own spiritual future, but the role you'll play in humanity's collective awakening. The time for passive observation is ending. The moment for conscious participation has arrived. And so we arrive where all genuine spiritual journeys must lead, not to a destination but to a transformation. Helena Blavatsky spent her entire life pointing toward this moment, the recognition that you already possess everything needed for complete spiritual liberation. The forbidden gospel of Adam and Eve was never really about the past. It was always a map of consciousness, a guide to the divine spark that exists within every human soul, waiting to be awakened and expressed. When you truly understand what the serpent offered, not temptation but liberation, not fall but rise, not sin but awakening, you realize that the Garden of Eden isn't a place you've been expelled from, but a state of consciousness you can return to at any moment through the simple act of choosing truth over illusion. Blavatsky's deepest teaching echoed this same understanding. The masters, the hidden schools, the secret wisdom, all of these are external symbols of the inner reality that you are already a divine being temporarily forgetting your true nature. The Nag Hammadi texts emerge from their buried hiding place for one purpose: to remind humanity that we are not fallen creatures in need of salvation, but divine sparks in the process of remembering our inherent unity with the infinite source of all existence. This is the real reason why this knowledge was hidden, why teachers were persecuted, why texts were buried in caves. Not because the information is dangerous, but because the transformation it catalyzes threatens every system of control that depends on human ignorance and spiritual dependence. You are no longer ignorant. You can no longer pretend that you don't know what you now know. The choice has been presented, the test has been taken, the invitation to conscious evolution has been extended. What remains is the most beautiful realization of all. You don't have to wait for permission from any authority, initiation from any school, or salvation from any savior. The same consciousness that spoke through Helena Blavatsky, that preserved the Gnostic wisdom, that inspired the writing of the forbidden Gospels lives within you right now. If you've followed this journey to its end, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share in the comments what has resonated most powerfully with you throughout this exploration. The serpent's gift is yours to claim. The ancient wisdom is yours to live. The divine nature is yours to express. Welcome to your awakening. Welcome home.